Well, hi, it's Marilyn Price. I'm just showing off a little bit for my friend, your friend, Mrs. Goose, who is working with me today on the Mentor Project. And we welcome you. Mrs. Goose has always wanted to write a new story, and I'll tell you why. Because I was trying to find a bunch of stories about geese, and they, of course, have to meet her approval because she is the principal actress in the story. That's right. I know, Mrs. Goose. Um, and then I read this one that it's very famous. As a matter of fact, it's really old. It's even older than you, Mrs. G. It's called The Goose That Laid the Golden Egg. And she did not care for that story one whit. And she said, maybe sometimes they ought to hear from the goose instead of the rest of the people that write the stories. And it is a wonderful story, I will agree, because it teaches us so many things. In particular, it teaches us about, well, I'm not going to tell you because you'll find out when you hear Mrs. Goose's story that she and her handler put together. So, if you're all ready, are you ready, Mrs. Goose? You want to read it or should I? My turn to read? Oh, that's very kind. Should we read together? You could have the good parts. You could have the honk parts. Yes, you could have the honk parts. Do you want me to have everything? Such a nice goose. So I'm going to do that, and I invite you to come along. We're going to read right from this book that Mrs. Goose put together with a little help from a friend, because this is definitely Mrs. Goose. Don't eat the book. Thank you very much. So I'm going to hold up. Didn't want to give away the end. Mrs. Goose and I are going to read along, okay? And she'll nod wisely. Here it goes. The Goose That Laid the Golden Egg. From Aesop to Mrs. Goose 2, with a little help from her handler. That's me, Marilyn Price. There was once a couple who had a goose that lay golden eggs, one every day. The couple, in their greed, wanted more and attempted several different ways to capture more eggs than just one a day. Here are a few of the things that have been written up in a variety of stories. One of the stories talks about chopping off the goose's head. She did not like that. And remove all the eggs that she must have inside of her, but only delivered one a day. Yow, that hurts. One of the stories talks about feeding her more and more food so she would deliver more eggs in one day. And in that story, the goose burst open. Yeah, that hurt too. Mrs. Goose had, however, an alternative story, and it goes like this. Unfortunately for the greedy couple, Mrs. Goose, who had laid the golden eggs, was a very smart goose, who understood their human conversations. This, by the way, is what most folks forget about folk tales. The most important character is never considered to be the change agent, the fixer, the problem solver, or even thought about in a revision of the tale. Mrs. Goose did not want her head removed or to be stuffed so that she would burst, so she needed an oat. Also, in the back of her little feathered head, she was curious why they needed a golden egg a day. What did they do with the money they got by selling the eggs? Did they help other geese? Mm-mm. Did they save the wild bird habitats? Mm-mm. Seeing how they lived and how they spent only on themselves and their insatiable desire to have more, but never helping other geese build nests or offer mileage plus opportunities to go south and then again north. Mrs. Goose decided she would save herself and her well feathered bank and sneak off. So that night, in the middle of the night, when all was sleeping, Mrs. G tiptoed out of the coop, chicken and or goose coop, on her web feet and headed to safety high up in a barn in the neighborhood. She had, in the manner of speaking, flown the coop. She had considered climbing up the beanstalk, but remembered that was from another story. So she stayed in the loft of a barn that was carefully placed in the center of town and, coincidentally, near a bank. The next day, the greedy couple, who we're going to call the Greeds, were frantic. They couldn't find their ticket or their paycheck, so to speak. No one would help them. Absolutely no one. You wouldn't, nor would I. The townspeople were no fools and knew of the Greed's callous behavior. Days passed, then weeks, and their search was futile. The liberated Mrs. G was taken care of by the people in the village, and her eggs carefully deposited in the bank in her name. Finally, the Greeds left town, having failed in their search, and were never heard from again. Yay! Imagine Mrs. G's delight upon hearing the news. She squawked. She was very grateful, and having learned that greed was not the way to be, but gratitude was, she decided to thank her friends who had hidden her and fed her and loved on her and carefully kept her eggs. So she created a not-for-profit foundation whose mission was to take care of others in trouble, and especially endangered species like geese that lay golden eggs. An endangered species she determined could be any creature, large or small, who works hard to take care of others, even those who are not geese. Because of the constant flow of her eggs, she has a large endowment, and her impact is felt throughout the world. The foundation, MGGE, is registered with the Farm Bureau and is a non-profit 501c3. Please feel free to write her at mrsgoose2@gmail.com and tell her what you need. It takes her a while to type with her web feet, but she is very responsible. And, by the way, she is living happily ever after. And that, of course, is the end of our tale. Mrs. Goose and I thank you very much for coming and listening in on her brand new, first ever story. We would like to encourage you to write a story as well. And we also encourage you to take care of each other, to live happily ever after, and during, of course, to tune in to the Mentor Project on Facebook and YouTube. And oh yeah, you can also listen to us on our podcast. I thank you very much, and Mrs. Goose would like to send you a kiss and show you one more time the book that she created with her handler. And that, ladies and gentlemen, that is the